Hi, okay, welcome to week 6, Architecture. As the authors state, architecture can be considered a form of sculpture, hollowed out, used by people, where sculpture is just something that takes up space and shapes the space around it. We don't have lots of sculptures where we're going inside and back and through and over as we do in buildings. There are 4 requirements the authors talk about for architecture: technical, functional, spatial, and revelatory. The ones that I want you to focus on are primarily dealing with space. How does the building you look at interact with space? As you're walking across Mesa University's campus, notice the buildings. I think, at least based on my experience there, your campus has quite a few interesting buildings to interact with, to sit down and look at and have an opinion about. Now, the authors talk about how buildings can be earth-centered or sky-oriented or earth-resting. All of these are ways of talking about how the building interacts either with the earth as a part of it, dominating it, or standing above it, and how it interacts with the sky. Does it raise up into the sky? Is it just surrounded by the sky? Is the sky merely a backdrop? All of these things are important, and as you are examining things this week, pay attention to the buildings and see if you can figure out for yourselves what you think a building is. Is it just resting there? Is it dominating the earth? Those are pretty rare buildings to find, especially in our modern culture. Finally, I want you to think about, how do we as people interact with our buildings? Does a building say anything in its design about how we're supposed to use the building? There are many purpose-built buildings, and you can tell by walking into, say, a classroom that it is designed specifically for a lecture-type format. Usually you'll have rows, and you'll have the teacher's lectern down at the front with either a projector or a chalkboard where they can put formulae or little highlighted notes for you to monitor. You know by walking in there what the space is for. If you walked into any similar space anywhere in the world, you could probably reasonably expect that it's going to be some form of classroom. Same thing with the church. When you go into church, the way that the pews are set up are focused towards the altar and towards the representation of whoever it is you're praying to on that particular day. It's not facing each other. If you walked into a classroom where everything was circular, that would say something to you as well. It would say that this is a class that is designed more for students to interact. So, ask yourselves, as you walk in and out of the buildings that you inhabit there on campus, what are you using these buildings for? Does the function follow the form, and vice versa? Does form follow function? And that's a very popular way to design things, and has been for 50, 60 years at least. Is that important? Does form have to follow function? If you look online at the Disney Concert Hall here in downtown Los Angeles, it is an incredibly sculptural, beautiful building. Frank Gehry's work, you know it the moment you see it. He's the architect. But does the form follow function, or is that building existing as something above and beyond just a place to house musical concerts? Last thing I'd want you to think about is something the authors mention at the end, which is city planning. If you've traveled yet, notice the cities you go to. I've been to many cities around at least the Western Hemisphere, and notice how haphazardly the cities can be designed, and yet there are areas of almost all of them that seem to be consciously designed to work together in a very particular flow. Think about that and the import of that, and how that might be something that needs more conscious thought for what we do for our country's future. Make sure to stay on top of the reading and the discussions because you're coming up on your next exam. All right? If you have questions, email me.